Ice Age Continental Drift is directed by Steve Martino and Michael Thurmeyer, written by Michael Berg and Jason Fuchs, and features the voices of everybody from the first three movies, plus Peter Dinklage, Wanda Sykes, Jennifer Lopez, Josh Gad, and Keke Palmer. And in Ice Age Continental Drift, Manny, Diego, Sid, and Sid's grandma, voiced by Wanda Sykes, find themselves separated from Ellie and Manny's daughter Peaches, voiced by Keke Palmer, when the continents start breaking apart. So while they make their way back to the rest of the herd, they encounter a group of pirates led by a Gigantopithecus named Captain Gut, voiced by Peter Dinklage. Now, I vaguely remember when this movie came out back in 2012, and the thing I noticed is that whenever a new Ice Age movie comes out, everyone seems sort of surprised because no one ever expects them to make another one, and it takes so long to make these movies. And honestly, this is pretty much the exact same movie as the last one, Dawn of the Dinosaurs. You know, it's still really boring in my opinion. It's still kind of disjointed to watch, but it still has really great animation. It's the same thing. And one of the big issues that the Ice Age series has had is that they keep sticking to the theme of family. You know, all the way from the first movie it was about family, but the way they tackle this theme just isn't effective. You know, the way they tackle it is that they just keep adding family members, they just keep adding people to this herd, so by this movie, you have so many characters and you can't really focus on the ones that really matter. And besides, like, the messages we're getting about all this family stuff is, you know, the same thing repeated over and over again. And what's annoying is that the character development here only really happens at the beginning and the end. All the stuff in the middle doesn't really seem to affect the characters' arcs, really. You know, they're just there as an excuse to say, oh, by the end, this is why they're gonna change. But when these characters do change, they don't actually develop in any significant way. By the ending, they are, at their core, the same unchanged characters. And our three main leads, Manny, Diego, and Sid, all get new characters they interact with, but all these interactions come off as very inauthentic. You know, Manny has his daughter, Peaches, but, you know, it's a very stereotypical uptight father with sort of rebellious teenage daughter. Sid has his grandma, but you don't feel any like familial connection between them. And Diego, the worst part, that they gave Diego a love interest. I mean, is there really a need to give this saber-toothed tiger a love interest? And all these new characters I mentioned are completely forgettable. There's no one's ever as interesting as Manny, Diego, and Sid were in the first movie. And yes, there are funny moments in Ice Age Continental Drift. There are funny moments in every single Ice Age movie, but there's also so much just cringe-worthy dialogue. To be fair though, in terms of like points of view and the number of storylines happening, this movie is a bit cleaner than Dawn of the Dinosaurs. The two main points of view you have here are Manny's group and then Ellie's group, but everything that has to do with Ellie and Peaches is just so unbelievably uninteresting and unfulfilling. It's like this weird teen comedy slash coming of age thing that does not fit. And this is one of those movies that actually feels a bit too edited by the editors James Palumbo and David Ian Salter. This movie is only 88 minutes long. That's an hour, 28 minutes, and that's including the credits and the scratch scenes. So, you know, there's no real time to develop this plot or these characters. Once again, it's proof that this movie exists purely for slapstick comedy, and the tone jumps wildly from being an adventure to being a dumb comedy to being a coming-of-age movie without any real balance among all these parts. Even at a certain point, this movie kind of becomes a musical because there's a scene where Gut and his crew sing this song that isn't even really that good. And of course, this movie ends with a generic pop song by Keke Palmer, which is a really weird tone-deaf choice. Speaking of somewhat tone-deaf choices, I personally don't think Peter Dinklage and Jennifer Lopez fit their roles well. They just felt like, you know, celebrity voices again. And Keke Palmer, who plays a mammoth here, doesn't really come off like she's acting. You know, she comes off more like a whiny teenager, as do Drake and Nicki Minaj, who are both in this movie. On the positive end though, the animation here is still great. You know, there's a more limited color palette here compared to the last movie, but they compensate for this with large-scale events that are very well rendered, some improved water effects, although there's something off in the way that the characters move. Whenever you see Diego running, it feels kind of stiff and awkward, and the action is a bit too stylized for my taste. There's too much slow-mo. Though to be fair, the action overall is more interesting to watch because there's more moving pieces. Also, John Powell's score here is a lot better than it was in the last one because I feel like he took inspiration from a lot of classic adventure themes. And in terms of voice acting, Wanda Sykes and Josh Gad, who plays this, I don't really know what he was, but they were good. But who really brought his A-game, surprisingly, was Ray Romano. You know, he was kind of sleepwalking through the last one, but here he was surprisingly committed, and I don't think anyone really expected him to bring this much level of performance to his role. But hey, he did a good job. In the end though, I still cannot call Ice Age Continental Drift a good movie. Again, it's worth watching if you're like an animation nut and you just want to see good animation, but for the story, there's nothing for you here. They really should have stopped the series at 3 or at the most 4. Alright, so those are my thoughts on Ice Age Continental Drift. Have you guys seen it? What do you think about it? Whether you agree with me or not, please leave me a comment. Let's have a conversation.